Welcome back to another episode of Conscious Caregiving with L&L. I am your co-host, Lance A. Slatton. I am joined, as always, by my esteemed colleague and friend, Lori La Bey. Welcome, Lori. How are you?
I am doing wonderful, and I'm excited to have this conversation today with you since the holidays are upon us. And, people are always wondering, what should I get my
Yes.
parent, my aunt and uncle, my neighbor, my coworker who's a little older. And it can be tough because as we age, I think we look at ourselves as we have everything that we need. And people look at us too, like, what do I get them? They kind of got everything.
Right.
So I think it'll be an interesting conversation with just tips where you can spend money or not spend money. Sometimes it's just a gift of time that is
Yes.
really appreciated as well. So,
Yes. And I love that gift of time because, not often do we get to see our loved ones on a regular basis for work reasons, geographical reasons, and otherwise. And sometimes it's something just as simple as time, being able to sit there, have lunch, or spend the day with them, or, go out if they're able. But, many of the best Christmas gifts for seniors focus on comfort, connection, and independence, and whether they need extra help or are fully independent. I think thoughtful experience gifts and simple conversations can also make the holidays a lot easier and really more meaningful for seniors and the family.
oh, I agree. And there's so much we can learn from one another and reminisce about old times and things, or just help out with daily tasks, like little things, like even if you commit to coming over to help set up their meds,
Yeah.
and just have a conversation over that. That way, you're kind of can check in if somebody needs assistance with that. And a lot of times, you'll be talking to a parent that goes, "Oh, I got that handled," but it's not because you're seeing some difference in just saying, this would make me feel better. I would feel safer for you. I would sleep better at night. Plus, it gives us time to talk or chat, or like you said, maybe go out to lunch afterwards or breakfast, or I can help with the laundry or whatever it is. If there's steps in the house that might be dangerous, work around that, or even cleaning, the house out, trying to go through things a little bit at a time, or pulling stuff off of high shelves and
Right.
making them more accessible. I mean, how many times do you hear people falling on the step stool, or, jumping up on a chair trying to reach for something higher? And none of us want to deal with that because it's the older we get, the harder it is to recover. So I think those things make a big, big difference. But I think you have to approach them as to the whys, not that you're not able to. But I found with my own family saying it makes me sleep better at night and I want to help you.
Right.
This isn't a burden. This, I think this will be good for all of us in
Yeah.
the long
100%. Talking about gifts ideas for the holidays, and really some of this doesn't just have to be for the holidays either. And kind of piggybacking, Lori, on your great suggestion about time as a gift. I wanted to just kind of give a few general topics that can help make conversations with seniors more meaningful and less stressful for everybody. I'm just going to give you like two or three of my favorite ones. When you're meeting with your loved ones over the holiday seasons, ask them about their favorite holiday memories, early jobs they may have had, family traditions, or even a fun one like what's the best gift you've ever received. And, spend that time listening to their stories, and invite their advice. Ask them what helped you most when you were raising a family, or what do you wish younger people understood about getting older? And one of my favorites was really checking in about their needs, something that you were alluding to. You can ask them, are there any chores, appointments, or any help with technology that are harder this time of year that we could help with? Let them give you the ideas for the gift. You may not even need to actually purchase something, but your time and listening to their needs could be the gift.
Yeah. Well, or, another thing would be sharing recipes and maybe baking or cooking together, passing those family recipes. I still get calls from my dad's clam dip all the time. Now, what do I need to put in there? I'm like, can't you write it down, to my brothers and stuff. But it was just that family favorite thing, or, my mom's cheesy potatoes beats out anybody's. And so that's something that we always make now is mom's cheesy potatoes. So, and my like grandkids, they love helping. So, mom, could you help teach my daughters, how to make a salad? What's your favorite salad? And let them kind of, clean some of the vegetables and, or, it can be anything like that, but just that inclusive thing. Or little kids might make, I do remember getting those coupon books, or maybe you
Oh yeah.
still do,
Yeah. Yeah.
of, if it's a hug, if it's story time, whatever it might be, maybe it's going to McDonald's, just sharing the time with them, going for a walk. I really encourage families to do things like that too. But then again, you have to follow up. You don't want to give it and then not remind them to use it, because sometimes it can get lost in the shuffle.
Right.
With things like that. But I think those are really precious. I know as I age, I just love the homemade cards,
Mm.
from the kids, or, something, hearing their stories,
Yes. Yeah.
because I think so often people forget about touching base and how isolated some of our seniors can be, as their friends age and some pass on. That's really important to make those calls. So it could even be a commitment to yourself. You don't have to tell them, but you're going to call at least once a week and just check in. And maybe you rotate that through the family members, so somebody's checking in on them all the time. So it's not a formal gift that you're going to announce, because then it turns into a task,
Right.
but just something kind to do, like you said, every day, is really cool. But there's a lot of specialty gifts out there to be able to get. I mean, just for my mom, every year it was, she and she probably had more than she used, but it was her favorite perfume.
Mm.
She had one favorite perfume that was very expensive, and I know we always got a new one before the old one went, but that just brought her back in time. And I still to this day, and she's been gone since 2014, don't know the specifics, but I know it had something to do with her and my dad.
Okay.
When they first met and got together, and that was just a very special fragrance to her. And knowing those things, because aromas can trigger wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful thoughts and
Absolutely.
comfort.
Absolutely. I want to kind of piggyback on your gift suggestions. You know, time isn't always possible as well for people because they may live far away, or there may be circumstances that doesn't allow for that. So if you do want to get your loved one ideas, or a gift for Christmas, and this is really for seniors who may need extra help or assistance, mobility limitations, or chronic illness, or memory concerns. Some good ideas are like adaptive comfort items, like a lap blanket or a wheelchair blanket, even a warm robe, soft clothing that's easy to put on, or a weighted lap comforter or blanket. And, that also helps with anxiety, or just something simple like practical helpers, like large button remote controls. I know for my grandparents and even my mother-in-law, who's now having some health issues, it's hard not only to see the numbers or the button on the remote control, but it's also hard to push it. And so we got her one of those large, oversized remote controls, and it's been life changing for her. And or the other ideas are motion sensor or voice controlled lamps, where they may not be able to get up and turn it on or off, but it's voice activated or motion activated. And one that we're big advocates on are pill organizers, or an interactive speaker to help set reminders and to help control those lights. Something that you'd already mentioned though is, vouchers or coupons for various tasks and chores. I think that's great for the grandchildren to do because it keeps them engaged and involved with their grandma or grandparents. And, it helps them to, learn those recipes and have those conversations. You know, I think any gift that really comes from the heart that's going to be useful and practical is wonderful. But when it's something, again, I think number one gift is your time when you're able. I think that gift is the gift that not only benefits them, but it benefits you as well.
Yeah, I think looking at like technology is helpful too. Sometimes getting off the phone and onto an iPad that's a little bigger. A lot
Mm.
of times people don't like necessarily a full computer, even a laptop, but the iPads seem to be very popular. And then connecting them to, the technology. You have to be there or have to have somebody to kind of teach them the technology. Otherwise, it kind of sits in the box or on the table and doesn't get used. But there's a lot of programs out there like even GrandPad where you get the iPad and then you can get the social connections where they can talk instead of texting. They can, talk to call you. You can do video conferencing. They can have a closed network because that's an issue for many families
Mm.
where they get on scammers lists and then they're getting bombarded by things. Telephones, a lot of times I think people will go out and buy the latest and greatest, iPhone or Android or whatever, but it's too much stuff. And so looking at something that's easier to manage, again, that protects their interest as well, so they don't get on all these scammer calls. I've had neighbors and friends who have dealt with it, and it's absolutely horrible. There are things where you can even buy technology if there are some issues with finances to monitor that. There's just so many cool things. There's the digital picture frame that a lot of times you can even change out by your phone, so you can upload new photos to those. Or maybe it's going to be, a Roku system that might be easier to handle than all of the other variables that are out there for people to engage with, or gift coupons. And maybe it's not to go someplace with you, but maybe it's for them to go out with friends and
Right.
to be able to invite a friend out. A lot of seniors have tight budgets and they don't feel like they can do that, or their friends can't afford it either. Even if it's just going out for a cup of coffee and a muffin or something, that can take a chunk out of your change, so those little things like that, or helping them set up grocery delivery, especially like in Minnesota and Michigan. I mean, we get a lot of snow and it can be, difficult to maneuver in those parking lots, and,
Right.
kind of a fall waiting to happen, getting that delivered to your house. And sometimes it just needs to be set up. Maybe they don't know how to do that or they don't want to do that. I have a neighbor where her son in Ohio just, every week he checks with his mom and says, "Oh, let's go through your fridge and your cupboards. What do you need?" And then he just has it delivered to her house, which is really sweet to be able to do. Um, so yeah, it really is endless. Or, making something for them, if it's a birdhouse, if it's or a bird feeder, or putting something like that up that draws nature into them. If they're sitting by a window, just adding a presence, because not only are you going to add the squirrels and the birds coming, but every time they look at that, they're going to remember you got that for
Yeah.
them, and that
Absolutely.
connection. And that's really important, because I think, not all families are close to begin with, and they're not close in terms of proximity either. But it's important, especially I think for our senior populations, to still feel that closeness. They don't necessarily understand, because when they were younger, their family was still all close to them.
Right.
People weren't as scattered, they weren't as busy. You think back, many of them, the moms just stayed home. And so the whole environment and experience of what family is was very different to them than what it is right now.
Yeah.
And in trying to remove that feeling that so many carry that they're a burden, instead, replacing that with, we appreciate you and we want to care for you. There are even places where you can have something monthly delivered to them, or quarterly, just thinking of you, or, maybe they like the flowers. And I feel like we're going down the grandma road a lot. We should probably talk about some things for the guys too, in terms of what they like.
I was just going to add to that though, Lori, and this would be applicable to grandpa or grandma, and it kind of piggybacks on what you were saying. First, I would say, look at some of the practical needs. It doesn't always have to be a tangible electronic device or, a new sweatshirt, but something that could help them day to day, such as, setting them up for grocery delivery service or having their pharmacy, set them up for, delivery for their pharmacy and their prescriptions, so that, if they do have difficulty, especially in the winter months in, states like Michigan and Minnesota, where the roads can be extra slippery, their walks could be icy, their steps, anything that could potentially cause a hazard or a fall. If you eliminate that risk, you might be really helping them out in more ways than one. So having those groceries delivered right to their door, having their prescriptions delivered right to the door, where it eliminates that risk and maybe even an inconvenience of them having to go in and out, to do those things. I know I would love it, and I'm, younger than a grandma or a grandpa right now, if our groceries were delivered right to our door, because, we've been having some pretty significant, weather here this winter in Michigan. It'd been great if those groceries were right there on my front door and I didn't have to go out and load and unload and push that cart through a snow covered parking lot. So things like that could be very beneficial. But on the more meaningful side, like I love the idea of, setting something out like a bird feeder or something out their window. But, let's say maybe you're not as crafty and able to build a bird feeder like myself. You could do something, just as good, like a scrapbook of family memories and photos, and, label it so they can read where it's from, if you're able to, who it is, and that's something that they would love and treasure, and look at it all the time. I think those are, wonderful ways to, kind of pass on and keep those memories alive.
Yeah, well, and that's something like the family could do jointly, or people could do
Yeah.
individually and go, these are my favorite family memories. I want to share them with you, you know,
Yeah, absolutely.
really, really important. Because, I think as parents, we all question, did I do a good job? Was I a good mom or a dad? And that would be really reassuring to them, those sweet moments. Another thing would be reaching out to some of their friends
Mm,
as well. Again, kind of on the side, but how are they doing? Maybe if you're not around, to ask, what do they need? I want to surprise them,
right.
type thing, and see what's what. It could be even offering to, and this could go either way with parent, depending on where they are, a friend. I'd like to be your eyes and ears when you go to a medical appointment.
Yeah.
And just, I'm 66. I like somebody there. I when I broke my elbow, I grabbed a girlfriend because my daughter wasn't able to go, and I'm like, you want to come with, just to make sure I'm at, and I feel like I'm pretty savvy, but it's
Right.
like, I'm not going to let my pride get in the way. I'd rather make sure that the decisions are correct and I'm hearing everything that I need to hear. And it's a comfort. Maybe they don't drive anymore. So maybe it's helping them, if it's with an Uber, or, if you're able financially to even set up a little account balance for them to
Yeah.
be able to tap into something like that, or offer to set it up for them if it's too much.
Yeah.
Um, I know some families, and again, this gets more expensive, but if they're far away, they'll fly their loved one out, and have them stay with them. And again, not everybody's able to do that, but all things are appreciated. But again, then you have to make sure it's realistic. My folks had friends that always wanted them to go down to Texas, and they couldn't maneuver that. My mom had dementia, my dad had brain cancer, and so going through and maneuvering an airport was not going to work for them.
Right.
Between strength and memory, with the two of them, they would have been exhausted, by the time they got there. And so you have to be realistic with some of those things. I think is really, really important too. Um, Sometimes people will share art that they've done,
Mm.
or poetry, writing letters, because that's an era that used to get letters. I mean,
Right.
people actually used to write, so that's an exciting thing when they get something that's not a bill.
Right.
And I know many people, hold on, and they date everything, and they keep all those cards and pull those out. Or helping them, maybe they want to do Christmas cards, but it's too much, and say, let me go get the stamps, and we can run and pick out some cards together, and I'll help you with that.
Yeah, if I could add, Lori, this is not something we had done with our family, but it was something we had done for one of our clients. And she was elderly, lived alone, very passionate about Christmas time and baking. She was known for just, the baked goods that she would make at Christmas time were endless and just something that the family always looked forward to, during the holiday season. And this time, she was unable to do it any longer, and the family hired us to help. And she needed help with, getting to appointments and, housekeeping and, help with showering and things like that. And one of the things we're very passionate about when we're helping our families is helping to maintain as much independence as possible and incorporating into, our care plan what made this person who they were. And that was her big thing, is baking, and especially at Christmas time. And she mourned the loss of being able to do that. And so, what we had suggested was, we can still do the baking. We will just be your eyes, and you help us, and we'll do it together. And that just reinvigorated her just tremendously. It helped her to thrive again. So our staff, they would follow her directions. She couldn't read the recipe, she couldn't read the measuring cups or the stove, but she had everything else. So, the staff would put all their ingredients together in the baking bowl, and, then she would get her hands in there and start, mold, I don't know what the word is, but molding it and, sifting it and things. And she just had the greatest joy being able to do that again because she had somebody there to assist her to do so. And it just made her, come alive. She was like a whole new person.
Yep. Yep. I was just looking through some things for gift ideas, and one of the things, I had mentioned making a bird feeder or something, because sometimes the kids will do that with Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts. But you can buy one too. There's a few cool feeders out there that actually have cameras on them too,
Mm.
that so they can go to their phone or their iPad, or even hook it up to their TV, and they can see who's out there, and what
Oh,
they're
nice.
doing and stuff, which is kind of neat to be able to do, so that if they're able to read, still some people really like to read. Some people would prefer maybe audio books, and
Yeah.
turning them on to that. They might not even be aware of those types of things are available as sight goes, as we age. That could be a great comfort. The Alexis and things like that, where they can, tell them to do this and do that, or answer their questions, can be really comforting for many people as well. Or doing a playlist of their music that they like, not that you like, but
Right.
that's their favorite stuff, can make a huge difference, because music can be really calming.
Yeah.
So there's just, the things are endless, that people can do during the holidays. And again, like you said, these can be carried on throughout the year to keep those connections going. And again, some may run you more time, but I think you got to look at what you get out of it in the end, and what they get out of it, as well as things that you can purchase to ease their life. Or maybe it's even hiring, like you have a home healthcare agency.
Yeah.
Maybe they just need a little something to help them during the week. Maybe it's steps going down to the basement for the laundry that, isn't safe for anybody. I mean, when I sold real estate, I would hear stories of, well, I just go down on my butt with my basket on, and then I drag it up with a rope on the way up. And I just think, oh my gosh, that's just so not safe for people to do. But they do it because they don't want to lose their independence. But if it's a gift, and it can be more of a fun interaction with an aide who's not just there to do tasks, but to actually engage with them as well. I
Yeah.
think make a huge difference again for everybody, and to live more independently by getting some of those little, bugger tasks that just aren't safe to
Right.
do. The risk of falling is high as we age,
Very much so.
and we have to appreciate that. And I know even for myself at 66, I don't necessarily want to, but when I broke my elbow here that I'm still dealing with, I had friends come over, and I fell in the house. My dog kind of came rushing at me and bopped me over, but they went out and they bought me cleats to put on my boots. They're like, you
Oh,
can't do a fall. And so they're like, let's just get these on your boots. And I wear them all the time, and I go in a store and I'm kind of click, 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 but I'm not embarrassed. It's like,
right.
what? Hopefully I'm not going to fall, because I can't. If I would fall now with a broken elbow, I'd really be in trouble.
Right.
On top of that. And I just realized that, I'm not who I used to be, and my body reacts different than it used to. And so, it's just an added protection. But I've had more elderly people ask me, especially at the ortho clinic, where'd you get those? And what did they do? How do they work? So things people have thought about, but, didn't want to put themselves out there because it might make them look less than. And
Mhm.
I look at, I'm just trying to prevent something going haywire.
Right.
So I think that change in mindset can be huge. And there's a lot of young people that wear their cleats as well, but we don't really notice it, as an older person. We notice the older people with adaptions, but we look different at the young kids doing it. Then it's just a cool thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, the holidays, they say they go so quickly. I just speaking as a parent myself, it's hard to really put in the words how quick it does go by. So every holiday season, try to make it the best one yet. Try to spend that time, even even if it's just a phone call, if that's all you're able to do, it goes a long ways because especially for our loved ones who are in, a nursing home or in a facility of some type, they may not be able to go home and spend the holidays with you. So, try to bring the holidays to them the best you can.
Yeah, we always used to, when my mom was in a nursing home, um, for a long time, we would bring her out, but then it got uncomfortable for her, because the nursing home became her home and she felt safer. So then we just brought everything to her. We reserved the party room, and that worked out well for
Yeah.
all of us. And she was comfortable. We still all got together, and I wasn't too far from there, so we could still come back to our house if people wanted to do something else or do it on another day, or splitting up so it's not everybody at once, where it can be smaller groups where they get more visits. Sometimes is more appropriate depending on the needs of somebody. Like you said, for somebody with memory loss, the overstimulation can kind of go from 1 to 100 really fast.
Right.
Especially if they're used to being home alone and it's kind of quiet, just them and the TV or some music as some background, and all of a sudden there's 25 people in their home or their apartment, and you got young kids and they're squealing and happy and running around.
Right.
That can be like, whoa, this isn't as fun anymore, because they're trying to sort out what's going on,
Right.
and can't always keep up with, is this even safe? Sometimes, when things are moving so fast, especially with littler kids, being underfoot can be kind of scary, and people usually won't talk about that, but they think about it a lot. yet they love seeing them. They love observing. Or one of the things I think that's hard for families is the turnover of who's responsible for the holidays.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I hear seniors go, yeah, I wish my kids would kind of pick this up. It's getting to be a lot. But the kids are thinking, well, I know she really enjoys this and I don't want to take it away, and so how do you make that transfer, that transition, so it doesn't always land um, on your elder.
Right.
They've when you host, and a lot of people don't understand this, especially if they've always gone someplace, they don't understand how much work it is.
Right.
And then even when everyone's over, it's looking like it's going smooth, but that's because the host and hostess have things down to a schedule
Right.
in terms of this is when everything gets done and everyone's just kind of sitting there enjoying it. And the host and hostess doesn't always get to interact with everyone who's there because they're busy being busy, making sure it pulls off smooth. Um, and so that can be something that can be really a neat thing to do, or helping. I think a lot of elders have, special dishes, and maybe the silver needs to be cleaned, or the crystal cups, and going over early and helping them, get those things ready. Or maybe it's time to pass those on to the next person in the family if they're not using them, and having that discussion. We can still celebrate, we'll still honor your traditions, but just let us pick up the extra work. And
Right.
again, sometimes that's received really well, sometimes not so much, so I'm not saying it's a yes or no answer for that. Every family is different and you have to work with that. But even just recognizing the amount of work somebody is putting into something like that can make a huge difference to them, to feel acknowledged and validated
Yeah.
for what they've done over the years as well with that. Or decorating, for the holidays, get in on some of the pre stuff. Again, if you're close, if they're able to participate in something like that. Or sharing pictures if you're not close. This is what we're doing today. We wish you were here, and then sharing what you've accomplished. Those little things matter. And again, they're probably not gifts in the traditional sense of it's Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever you're celebrating, but they are daily gifts of connection and remembrance and inclusion, which I
Hmm.
think are even more critical.
Yeah. No, 100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you have some ideas for gifts, like for an elder gentleman, in terms of what they might like? I'm thinking, like with my dad, it was, what his gloves and a warm hat, for winter. Or he wasn't really a blanket guy where my mom would throw a blanket over her knees and stuff. My dad wasn't like that. I know some families play games, and that's always something fun that engages. But anything come to mind for a man?
Yeah, there's a few. You'd mentioned, but there's cozy loungewear and slippers. I think those are always good, especially as we age. Our feet tend to stay a little bit colder than the rest of our body, especially during winter. And it could be simple stuff like, a mug or a coffee cup that has a larger handle that's a little bit easier to hold. A nice oversized watch, because sometimes, again, with our vision and things, having a watch that has a larger display, I know those are really popular lately. And finding out what the interests are of that male senior, get them books or any sort of movies or things that are associated with his interest. I know with a lot of seniors, male or female, they enjoy games that they can play independently, because if they don't have company or someone else to play it with, they can still stay stimulated and engaged and take part in their game. So, like crossword puzzles that are larger, word search, or even a simple board and card games are always good too. So I think either, comfortable loungewear and slippers, maybe a coffee cup or a thermos or a mug that's a little bit easier to handle and hold for them. And then really kind of looking at what their interests are. Was your loved one in World War II or, Vietnam? And, do they enjoy the history of that? And that may go, counterintuitive for some people where maybe it brings up too many bad memories. But for a lot of our seniors that are veterans, they really enjoy that, history and things. So, or if they have hobbies or sports that they like, try to zero in on things that, that they can enjoy that, ties into their, to their hobbies and interests.
Yeah. I think if you're close by, it could be things like helping shovel or snowplow or
Yeah.
things like that. Again, it could be the coupon book for the kids to help out
Hmm.
with those things, or even running over and making a snowman outside,
Yeah.
just a window as a remembrance, that you remembered them.
Yeah.
When you were talking about men, I was thinking too of, if someone, like you said, hobbies. So if someone's a fisherman, it might be some tackle, and it might be, for some, it still might be that they're out there ice fishing too. you
Yeah.
know, there's all different types of things. I saw something that was pretty cool where it was, if you have someone who's handy or works on cars and things, they had gloves with lights on them.
Mm.
And so you could dig into the engine or whatever you're doing, or, if it's in a closet doing wiring in the house, and
Yeah.
your lights are literally at your fingertips where you're working. And I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. I might have to actually get that for my son-in-law. But yeah, it's endless, go walk through Menards and
Yes.
see if there's
Yes.
some things there. Or it might be certain treats that they like too,
Right.
certain foods and
Absolutely.
stuff. So I hope these types of things, help people with their lists of what can bring somebody comfort and joy. Because to me, that's what it's about, And again, it doesn't always have to cost money. It doesn't always have to take a lot of time either.
Right.
Even a short phone call can make a huge, huge difference
Absolutely.
to people. Um, Anything else we should add, Lance?
No, I think, I just want to wish all of our viewers and listeners a very Merry Christmas and a happy holiday season. And we look forward to seeing everybody back here in the new year.
Fantastic. And I ditto that, and hope everyone just has a really blessed season and a safe one. And I also really hope that some of these ideas carry over throughout the year,
Yeah.
to help build on the connections that you have, or build on the connections that you want,
Right.
with people that maybe you don't have right now. So thanks,
Absolutely.
everybody. Happy
Thank you.
holidays.
Yes. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us again here at Conscious Caregiving with L&L, where we're tackling the tough conversations. We look forward to seeing you again here next month.